A tranquil sanctuary. Jason Hart stood at the edge of his new backyard, the late afternoon sun casting a golden hue over the sparkling pool. This was his sanctuary, a hard-earned retreat after years of relentless work as a civil engineer. For Jason, this wasn't just a backyard, it was the embodiment of a dream he had finally turned into reality. After a difficult divorce, he'd thrown himself into his career, saving for a home where he could find peace. The house, with its modern kitchen and pristine pool, was his reward. It represented an oasis of calm, a place where he could escape the demands of his job and the lingering loneliness of living alone. The neighborhood seemed ideal, too. Quiet streets lined with neatly kept homes gave off a welcoming vibe. The real estate agent had talked about block parties and friendly neighbors, and on his first day, Jason was greeted with waves and warm smiles. The family next door, the Marshalls, were particularly memorable. Charles Chuck Marshall, a tall man with a booming voice, shook Jason's hand with a firm grip. "Welcome to the neighborhood, man. That pool's going to be a hit. My kids are already jealous." Jason chuckled politely, appreciating the gesture but secretly hoping to maintain a polite distance. The first few weeks were everything Jason had hoped for. He spent his evenings by the pool, the soft glow of the underwater lights creating a tranquil ambience. The peace, however, was short-lived. One Saturday, he returned from a run to find a group of teenagers splashing in his pool. Among them were the Marshall twins, laughing as if they owned the place. Jason, his tone calm but firm, asked them to leave. They scrambled out, muttering apologies. That evening, he went to talk to Chuck. "Our teenagers," Chuck said with a casual chuckle, his smile never wavering. "They don't always think things through. I'll talk to them, don't worry." Jason wanted to believe him, but Chuck's dismissive attitude left a knot of unease in his stomach. A few weeks later, his worst fears were confirmed. He came home to find the twins and their friends back in his pool, this time with snacks and loud music. Jason marched into the yard. "This is my pool," he said, his voice sharp with irritation. "And you're not allowed to use it. Get out now." His patience had snapped. He left a polite but direct note in the Marshall's mailbox, hoping to finally set a boundary. For a few days, it seemed to work, but then came the Saturday afternoon barbecue. Jason returned home to the unmistakable sounds of a full-fledged gathering in his backyard. Chuck, Melissa, their kids, and a dozen other people were lounging by the pool, grilling burgers and sipping drinks. "Hey Jason, hope you don't mind," Chuck called out, completely unbothered. "Your pool's too nice not to share." Jason's jaw clenched. "Chuck, this is my property. You can't just show up here with a crowd and act like it's yours. All of you, you need to leave." Chuck's smile faltered, but only slightly. All right, he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "No need to get worked up. We'll clear out." That evening, as Jason cleaned up the mess left behind, a heavy sense of disillusionment settled over him. His pool, which had once symbolized his sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. He had tried talking, he had tried leaving notes, and he had been ignored. The Marshalls clearly didn't respect his boundaries, and polite conversations weren't going to fix that. He needed a new approach, one that would make a clear and final statement. A clever retaliation. Jason spent the next few days researching pool maintenance, looking for a way to reclaim his space without resorting to open hostility. He found his answer in a process called superchlorination. It was a common procedure to kill bacteria, but it also made the water temporarily cloudy and unusable. To someone unfamiliar with pool care, it would look like a chemical disaster, harmless, but intimidating. He bought a bulk container of chlorine granules and a foaming agent used in themed pool parties. The goal wasn't to scare anyone, but to create enough of a spectacle that no one would want to come near his pool for a long time. On a Saturday afternoon, Jason returned home to the now familiar sounds of a party in his backyard. This time, he wasn't angry, he was prepared. He walked purposefully toward the pool, a bucket of chlorine and the foaming agent in his hands. Chuck saw him and waved. "Glad you could join the party," he called, beer in hand. "Grab a drink and relax, man." Jason ignored him. He knelt by the pool and began scooping chlorine granules into the water. Almost immediately, the water bubbled and churned, releasing small plumes of steam. A few people noticed and stopped what they were doing, their laughter fading into confused murmurs. Jason then grabbed the foaming agent and poured it into the pool. Thick, white bubbles rose to the surface, spreading rapidly until the entire pool was covered in a layer of foam. The water turned a murky, uninviting grey. The music from the speaker seemed oddly out of place against the backdrop of stunned silence. "What the hell is this, Jason?" Chuck demanded, his voice a mixture of irritation and curiosity. Jason turned to face him, his expression calm and resolute. "Pool maintenance," he said simply. "The water is not safe for swimming right now. You should probably leave." Chuck's jaw tightened, but the sight of the bubbling, foaming pool behind Jason seemed to sap his confidence. He glanced at his guests, many of whom were already gathering their belongings and murmuring about heading home. Chuck turned and walked away, his family following close behind. When the yard was empty, Jason let out a long breath and smiled faintly. The pool was no longer the peaceful oasis he had envisioned, but for now, it would do. More importantly, it was his oasis, and he had made it clear that he intended to keep it that way. A new beginning in the weeks that followed, the Marshalls kept their distance. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable, but Jason found peace in the quiet. He meticulously cleaned the pool, restoring it to its pristine condition. He had won the battle, and his backyard was his sanctuary once more. The silence was broken one day when Melissa Marshall knocked on his door. She was apologetic and frustrated, explaining that the kids didn't understand why they couldn't go swimming and that Chuck felt Jason was singling them out. "Melissa," Jason said calmly, "I'm not singling anyone out. I'm protecting my property. I've been more than patient, but enough is enough." Melissa nodded slowly. "I get it. I'll talk to Chuck. I hope we can move past this." "I want that too, Melissa," Jason replied. "But it has to start with boundaries." A month later, the neighborhood had returned to its usual rhythm. Jason, eager to mend fences and show his neighbors he was open to community, decided to host a barbecue. He personally delivered invitations to everyone on the street, including the Marshalls. On the day of the party, the atmosphere was lively and relaxed. The Marshalls arrived, and Chuck, carrying a bottle of wine, looked hesitant. "Thanks for the invite," he said, his tone unusually subdued. "Didn't think you'd want us here after everything." "It's water under the bridge, Chuck," Jason said with a genuine smile. "Today's about starting fresh." The two men stood together by the grill, talking quietly. "I'm sorry for the way we acted," Chuck said, his expression earnest. "We didn't respect your space, and that was wrong." Jason nodded. "I appreciate that. I just hope we can keep things respectful from here on out." "We will. I promise," Chuck replied. For the first time since their conflict began, Jason felt a sense of genuine understanding. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was a start. As the last of the guests left and the yard grew quiet, Jason stood by the pool, watching the moonlight dance on its surface. The battles of the past were behind him. His home was no longer just a place to live, it was a testament to his resilience and a space he could finally call his own. He had found his peace, and for the first time in a long time, Jason felt truly at home.